What's up, guys? Hey, my name is Patrick. I'm one of the pastors on staff. If you ask me what my pastoral title is, even I don't really know, so you can literally call me whatever you want. I'm glad to be with you guys today because today we're actually starting a new series with Spring Creek students, and it's about the miracles of Jesus. And if you look at all Jesus did supernaturally, we can catch a really cool glimpse of who Jesus really is in a deeper level, in a deeper meaning, by watching what he did supernaturally. So I'm preaching or teaching to you guys from a miracle that happens after Jesus rose from the dead. So we just celebrated Easter with the 3 days that Jesus stayed in the tomb and the day that he got out. And after it, he had these very brief encounters with his disciples and his followers. And amongst them, one time, he performed a supernatural miracle. So if you guys want to tune with me, or if you guys have your Bibles with you, you can open up to John 21. The title of this miracle, or at least the title I gave it, is Breakfast is Delicious. John 21 says this. You guys can read along. Later, Jesus appeared again to his disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Several of his disciples were there: Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were there. Simon Peter said, "I'm going fishing." "We'll come too," they all said. So they went out to the boat, but they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but his disciples couldn't see who he was, and he called out to them, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" "No," they replied. Then he said, "Throw your net out to the right side of the boat and you'll get some." So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard this, that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped it for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from shore. But when they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them: fish cooked open over a charcoal fire, and some bread. "Bring some of your fish you just caught," Jesus said. So Simon went aboard and dragged the net to shore. There was 153 large fish, and yet their net hadn't torn. "Now come, have some breakfast," Jesus said. None of his disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" for they knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the 3rd time that Jesus had appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. You know, one of the things I miss most during this quarantine season is sports. I am devastated that the XFL got canceled because the XFL was cool. They had some cool rule changes that I hope eventually make their way to the NFL. But one of the things that I'm starting to miss, and you know how much you don't really notice something until it's gone, but I'm starting to miss baseball. And I'm not the biggest baseball fan. You know, I like it. I like the Rangers. I liked when they played the World Series, but I've never cared for it as much as the other sports. But over the season, I realized that now that it's gone, I really actually care about what's going on. I like, especially when it comes to hating on the Astros. You know, this is the season to jump on that bandwagon and ride it all day long, especially because dear sweet Pastor Alan is an Astros fan. So you guys can be praying for him in your own time. But one of the things about baseball that's interesting is the pitcher has one of the hardest jobs because they get tore up all the time. Every time they throw a ball, it has a chance of being swung and hit over the fences, home run, and everybody knows that pitcher screwed up. And so one of the greatest things about a pitcher's career is if they pitch something called a no-hitter. And a no-hitter is where the pitcher throws all the balls of the game and not a single hit on base happened. You know, a hit could happen, but it would be caught in the outfield, or, you know, it would be grounded out, but not a single person reached base because the pitcher threw a bad pitch, which is very interesting for a pitcher by the name of Ken Johnson, who pitched for a team called the Houston Colt 45s. Which is the precursor to the hated Houston Astros, but he pitched a no-hitter in 1964. What made this no-hitter really special is he pitched all the way, first inning, second inning, third inning, fourth inning, all the way to the ninth inning, no hits. And in the ninth inning, he pitched no hits. However, something happened. He pitched, it hit, and the outfielder made an error, which allowed somebody to get on base. And then somebody else made another error, and somebody was able to go all the way around the bases and scored. It wasn't the pitcher's fault, but they scored. So the pitcher got a no-hitter, but the Houston baseball team lost the game. He's the only pitcher in history to pitch a perfect game and still lose. He said this, he said, I pitched the best game of my life and still lost. A heck of a way to get into the record books. And I don't know if you've ever felt like this, because I have, but I've often felt like Ken Johnson, where you felt like you've done everything right and it's still not good enough. You still get the loss. Maybe it's the time that you actually studied for Algebra 2 and you still failed. Or the time that you really reached out to that friend in need and they still rejected you. Or the time that you did what you knew you were supposed to do and was asked and your dad still did not pay attention to you. Whatever it is, there's a million things that you feel like you can do right, but they don't meet somebody else's standards. And we seem to live in a world that believes in this karma, that if I do right and avoid evil, evil avoids me and right finds my life. We have a hard time understanding life when we do the right things and everyone still feels like we did something wrong. Like you've pitched a no-hitter and you still lost. One of my favorite saints in history, Saint Jean-Luc Picard, said, "It's impossible to commit no mistakes and still lose." That is not a weakness, that is life. So that very same thing is what happens to Jesus's 11 remaining disciples. They followed Jesus, they gave up everything, they gave their lives to the revolution, and he still died. Rome still ruled, and they were still nothing but fishermen. So what do fishermen do? They go fishing. And it says this, it says at dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but his disciples couldn't see who he was. And he's called out, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" I want to take this moment and really look at this miracle and see something special. The first thing that I think is special about this miracle and what we can see about Jesus in us is that his disciples didn't recognize that it was Jesus. And I mean, can you really blame them? They'd been up all night fishing. They had just gone through an emotional roller coaster of watching Jesus get crucified, then raised from the dead. And plus, it says right in scripture that he was over 100 yards away. But I think one of the reasons that they also didn't recognize Jesus is something that I do often. And it's because they were preoccupied with thinking of their failure. These guys were professional fishermen who spent all night and they caught nothing. You know, if you're like me, beating yourself up is a common daily occurrence. And I'm a pro at it. And it's easy to see my own life and think, man, God's not working in it because things are going wrong. And we seem to have this correlation that we think that God is working in our lives when things are going good, but the second things start going bad, man, devil's attacking me, God left, I don't know what's going on, I'm not doing the right things, and all it becomes is a self-beat up session because we think because life is going bad, God's not working in our life. And you know, wherever you're watching this, can I offer you a radical idea? God is working in your life, especially when things are going bad. From the start of time, God never ran from any of our fights. He dove headfirst into all our failures. He dove headfirst into us doing the wrong thing and still showing up and still working. And so I hope that you guys know that whatever is going wrong in your life, God didn't run away from it. He's right there. It's just not always easy for us to recognize him. And can I tell you just a little bit of an encouragement that it's a normal day for people who love Jesus to miss him and to not recognize him. But here's the thing, and here's what I hope you see about this miracle, is that Jesus knew exactly where his followers were. He knew exactly what was going on, and he had a perfect miracle in mind just for them. So even if you can't recognize him, he's still right there. You know what else I love about this miracle? It's one of my favorites, and it's that it's wonderful to think that Jesus showed up to these guys' work. He showed up right to what they were doing. You know, this miracle didn't take place in a religious service. It didn't take place in the temple. It didn't take place after he just gave a sermon. These guys were at their workplace. And the risen Redeemer and the ruler of the entire universe was showing men his interest and power were in the commonplace of their everyday life. If you're anything like me, you also can understand that we tend to treat Jesus as our friend when we go to church. But after we leave church, it's not something we think about a whole lot. You know, sometimes it's something, even if we're honest, some of us neglect. But I want to propose another radical thought to you. Jesus is interested in what you're interested in. You want to know how you can be a bad friend? Show zero interest into everything your friends care about. You want to know how to be a good friend? Be like my friend Jared. One of my best buddies is Jared. He's a pretty athletic guy, but he doesn't care at all about sports. He doesn't care about the Cowboys. He doesn't care about the Mavericks. Doesn't care about the Rangers. In fact, his favorite sport is spear throwing. I know. Why would I hang out with this guy? But I'll tell you why. It's because Jared knows every single word to the Eyes of Texas. Jared also would drop everything on any given weekend to drive with me to Austin to check out my Longhorns. And you want to know why? Because Jared's a good friend. And Jared knows I'm incredibly interested in the Longhorns. Therefore, Jared takes an interest in the Longhorns. And what do you think Jesus is to you if he really is a good friend? He's interested in what you're interested in. He likes what you like, and he's interested in what you dislike. He knows every star that spins in the night sky, and he also knows every hair on your head. Can I tell you that he is actually interested in who you have a crush on? That's our Jesus. He showed up to a boat in the middle of the night or in the morning to show his disciples that he was willing to come to them wherever they are. Hey, and the last thing that I love about this story is that this miracle of the 153 fish isn't a miracle about fishing. It's actually a financial miracle. Because you know what those 7 disciples were professionally? They were fishermen. And you know what they did with those 153 fish that they caught? I'll tell you, they didn't eat them all. They went to the market and they sold a bunch of those fish, and they probably got the biggest payday they've ever got in their life. The reason I love this story is because 2 years ago, I was getting pushed out of my job. And the people that I thought had my back didn't have my back. So I was essentially looking at finding a new job and faced with a failure of thinking I did everything that I could to do right, and it still wasn't enough. And you know, in all of it, I kept on praying, Lord, show me where you want me to work. In every single church I interviewed at, I realized I would hate ministry and I would hate working at this church if I took this job. And it looked like there was nothing out there. And to top all of that off, my first son was about to be born the very next month, and I didn't have a job. Can I tell you that I was looking for provision? I was looking for a way to find 153 fish. Heck, I was looking for a way to find 1 fish to feed and provide my family. And it was like fishing all night, and I couldn't find anything. You know, I was sitting at lunch with a friend, and he showed me this very miracle. And he showed me something. He said, Patrick, it says that he was cooking fish over charcoal, which means he had to have been there for a while to get that charcoal ready to cook. And if he had been there for a while, that means that he was ready to cook them breakfast, even if they didn't listen to him, even if they picked the wrong side to fish from. Because can you think about it? If you fished all night, you're a professional fisherman, and you knew everything that you should do to catch a fish, and some random stranger says, hey, have you tried fishing on the right side of the boat? It's like the equivalent of smashing your phone with a hammer in IT department saying, have you tried turning it back off and back on? Like, it would have been very easy for them to completely miss Jesus, to completely disobey him, to think, I'm not gonna listen to some guy telling me to throw it on the right side of the boat. I've been doing that all night. But yet, if they chose to disobey Jesus, if they chose to miss his financial miracle of that 153 fish, and they were to ride up to shore, guess what he would still have for them? He would have still been cooking them breakfast. He would have still provided for them, even if they disobeyed him. And you know, there's a lot of my prayers are going for you guys today, because I know that there's even some of you guys that your parents may have already lost their jobs, or maybe they're looking at losing their jobs. And I just want to say two things about that. The first thing is that burden is not yours to bear. So for any reason you feel stressed out or worried because maybe money's tight or your parents don't know where they're going to start looking for work from, I just want to say that's not your burden. Out of all the things to worry about or to think about, that's not one of them, and just let it go. And the second thing is, no matter what, if you feel like you've done everything right and you still feel like you're not good enough in any way, and Jesus even asks you to do something and you don't listen to him, you disobey him, you run away, can I tell you that somewhere out there, Jesus is cooking you breakfast, because he will still provide for you no matter what. Does that sound good? Hey, I'd love to hear where you guys are watching in the comments below. What we're doing here at Spring Creek is for you, so that you find a closer relationship with Jesus. And we also want you guys to tune in tomorrow at 7 o'clock for Zoom Hangout. See you guys soon.